The midnight cry. Behold, the bridegroom cometh. The return of Jesus Christ. Matthew chapter 25, verse 6. Part number 7. This is a partial list of birth pain signs that Jesus Christ is soon returning to the generation that will not pass away till all things are fulfilled. Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. This is a list of birth pain signs that Jesus Christ is returning. These are birth pain scriptures: Isaiah 66, verse 7 through verse 10, Matthew chapter 24, verse 1 through verse 51, Mark chapter 13, verse 8, 1 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 1 through verse 5, Romans chapter 8, verse 21 through verse 23. Some are pre-rapture signs and some are post-rapture signs. Present evidence says they have happened or are about to happen. Matthew chapter 24, verse 32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. Israel, when his branch is yet tender, and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. See also Mark chapter 11, verse 13, verse 20, and verse 21. Mark chapter 13, verse 28, and Luke chapter 21, verse 29, and verse 30. Verse 33. So likewise, ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door, the rapture. Verse 34. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Mark chapter 13, and Matthew chapter 24, and Luke chapter 21. Jesus is speaking from the Mount of Olives to the disciples about this question. Mark chapter 13, verse 4 says, Tell us when shall these things, plural, be, and what shall be the sign, singular, when all these things, plural, shall be fulfilled. Israel is the fig tree, prophetic sign, singular, that starts the last generation. When Israel becomes a nation, May 14, 1948, the things, plural, are the things that follows. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1. In the last days perilous times shall come. Men shall be lovers of self more than lovers of God. Matthew chapter 24 gives 17 signs, pre-rapture, post-rapture, or tribulation signs of Jesus Christ's return for a 1,000-year reign on earth. No matter how long you think a generation is, or when the rapture might be, Matthew chapter 24, verse 34 says, This generation, the generation that sees Israel become a nation, will not pass away till all things are fulfilled. Revelation chapter 6, verse 5 and 6, famine, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Matthew chapter 20, a penny was a day's wages in Jesus' day. Revelation chapter 8, verse 7, 1/3 part of trees was burned up, and all green grass was burned up. 35 types of grass are used for food, which includes wheat, rice, barley, oats, corn, sugarcane, bamboo, fieldgrass for cattle, dandelions, asparagus, rye, etc. Daniel chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar's statue of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. Knowledge is increased. Technology, TV, radio, phones, etc. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. Many run to and fro on high-speed transportation, planes and trains, etc. Nahum chapter 2, verse 3. The chariots shall be with torches, cars, trucks. Nahum chapter 2, verse 4. The chariots rage in the streets. They jostle one against another in the broadways. They seem like torches. They run like the lightning, or like anything that runs on wheels. Matthew chapter 24, verse 37. Same-sex marriage. Revelation chapter 13, verse 17. The control of money. The mark 666 and buying and selling. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 3. The man of sin about to be revealed. Isaiah chapter 8, verse 19. 2 Peter chapter 2 verse 1, 1 John chapter 4 verse 1, 1 Timothy chapter 4 verse 1, Revelation chapter 21 verse 8. Spiritualism will be prevalent. Daniel chapter 2 and chapter 7. The books of the Bible are unsealed. Daniel chapter 9 verse 24 through verse 27. Daniel's 70 weeks, 490 years ends. Matthew chapter 24 verse 11 and 24. Mark chapter 13 verse 22. Beware of false Christs and prophets. Matthew chapter 24 verse 9 and 10. Christians dying in parts of the world. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3. For when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child. Matthew chapter 24 verse 12. Iniquity shall abound, the increase of sin. Matthew chapter 24 verse 12. The love of many shall grow cold. Matthew chapter 24 verse 14. The gospel shall be preached in all the world. Matthew chapter 24 verse 15. The abomination of desolation spoken by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place occurs. Matthew chapter 24 verse 22. Mark chapter 13 verse 20. Except the Lord had shortened those days, no flesh should be saved. To rescue from danger of destruction, not salvation. Mankind now has the ability to annihilate themselves. Matthew chapter 24 verse 29. The sun darkened, the moon shall not give her light. Matthew chapter 24 verse 37. The days of Noah, eating, drinking, marrying, and giving in marriage. Matthew chapter 24 verse 7. Famines and the scarcity of food. Luke chapter 17 verse 26 through verse 30. The days of Lot. They did eat, drink, bought, sold, planted, builded. Luke chapter 21 verse 25 and verse 26. National disasters. Luke chapter 21 verse 24. Jerusalem trodden down of the Gentiles. Luke chapter 21 verse 25. Joel chapter 2 verse 28 through verse 31. The Holy Spirit is poured out on all flesh, mankind. Revelation chapter 6 verse 12 and verse 13. Signs in the sun and moon, blood moons, and stars. First Timothy chapter 4 verse 1 through verse 5. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, giving heed to seducing spirits and doctrines of devils. Verse 2. Speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron. Verse 3. Forbidding to marry, and commanding to abstain from meats, which God hath created to be received with thanksgiving of them which believe and know the truth. 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1 through verse 5. Know this also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. Verse 2. Men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy. Verse 3. Without natural affection, truth breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce despisers of those that are good. Verse 4. Traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasure more than lovers of God. Verse 5. Having a form, appearance of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. 2 Timothy chapter 4 verse 3 and verse 4. They do not endure sound doctrine, and teach fables. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 3 and 4. There are scoffers walking about after their own lusts. Luke chapter 21 verse 25. There is on the earth distress of nations with perplexity, confusion. Luke chapter 21 verse 25. The sea and the waves roaring. Luke chapter 21 verse 26. Men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Exodus chapter 20 verse 1 through 17. the 10 Commandments are being broken. Luke chapter 21, verse 34 through verse 36. And take heed to yourselves, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting and drunkenness and cares of this life, and so that day come upon you unawares. Verse 35. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Verse 36. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Ezekiel chapter 35, verse 36. Israel's return home. Ezekiel chapter 37. Judah and Israel reunites as one nation. Ezekiel chapter 38 and chapter 39. The signs of Gog and Magog war appear. Revelation chapter 18. Babylon the Great is fallen. New York City, with the World Trade Center and the United Nations, is the only city on earth that can fulfill this chapter. It is the only trade center of the world with a world government that is located by the sea. Babylon, the city, exists today. Revelation chapter 6. The 4 horsemen of the apocalypse appear. 1 John chapter 2, verse 18 through verse 22. 1 John chapter 4, verse 3. 2 John chapter 2, verse 7. The spirit of Antichrist is active in John's day. If the spirit of Antichrist was active in John's day without all 4 horsemen riding, then the spirit of the other 3 horsemen that takes peace from the earth, causes famine, kills with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and the beasts of the earth, then the spirit of all 4 horsemen have been active for a long time without the 4 horsemen outriding. Matthew chapter 25, verse 1 through 13. The 10 virgins, the 5 wise, the 5 foolish is the sign of the Lord's return. The 5 wise are the first fruits, 10%. The 5 foolish is 10%. The 10% of the wise and 10% of the foolish each equal 50% of the church. Can those numbers change before Jesus returns? Ruth, the book of Ruth. The 50 days of Boaz, Ruth, and Naomi is the same pre-shadow type of Jesus. The church and the Holy Spirit, both ending on Pentecost, are the day of first fruits. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. Woe to them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Romans chapter 3, verse 8. Good and evil are today being reversed. Luke chapter 21, verse 28. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. From this slide, you can go to part number 8. The church becomes the first fruits of the resurrection. Jesus Christ and the church are first fruits. The head, the body, and spirit unite on the day of the rapture at the beginning of the 7-year tribulation, 2023 AD to 2030 AD, before the return of Jesus Christ to rule and reign on earth for 1,000 years. My personal information is at the end of these notes.